Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I am so excited today to have with me a very special guest. You're going to appreciate who she is and what she does, and she has two distinct leadership roles that I think you're going to find fascinating in the way that she weaves them together. So I'd like you to welcome with me Cynthia Torres. Cynthia, welcome to my show.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be able to share a little bit about where I'm at in life and really the role that I feel fits my heart and moving forward with that.
Yes, it's going to be just a wonderful conversation, I know, Cynthia, based on our earlier one, where it's clear to me the work that you're doing comes so much from the heart. Let me introduce you in a more formal way to my audience before we get into our discussion here. Cynthia is a Colombian American who has resided for over 25 years in Oxnard, California, which is west of Los Angeles. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and is leaving an indelible mark in service to her community's vibrant and dynamic Latinx population. Her professional journey is nothing short of remarkable. Cynthia is the founder and CEO of the local for-profit business New Dawn Counseling and Consulting. And she also recently assumed the executive director position of a 30-year-old nonprofit organization called City Impact. And we're going to learn more about how these two entities are related, and she works them together so beautifully. So, Cynthia, let's start out just having you briefly tell us about your journey coming from Colombia to the United States and your beginning of New Dawn Counseling and Consulting.
Thank you, Meredith. So the story is really that Colombia was in a very at a very violent time, and I really couldn't see my future there. Then I decided to come to the United States. My sister was living here, and one of my passions was to really be able to learn more about how to become a better clinician. So I came to pursue my master's as a marriage and family therapist. And my parents actually are entrepreneurs. In Colombia, they own their own business and they have had it for the last 35, 36 years. And I was able to be witness to the social mobility that they were able to create in our family they were teachers, and once they started their school, our family grew significantly in financial resources, and with that our life changed significantly, with some bad things, because in Colombia, when you have a little bit more wealth, then you attract kidnapping and all of that, and so it's a mixed feeling. But anyways, so I think that inspiration led me to believe that I always wanted to have my own business, and learning from my parents' experience, I wanted to do it in an area that I felt that I had some kind of expertise. And so that's why I tried a couple of different times and finally was successful with New Dawn Counseling and Consulting. And so I think that when I came here, I came with $800 in my pocket, ready to start my master's. and had a lot of dreams and aspirations. And, 25 years later, I'm here, and it has been a beautiful journey. I am eternally grateful to the United States of America for the opportunities, because it's called the land of opportunities for a reason. And coming from a different country really allows you to see those opportunities and explore what would it be like. So that's a short version of why I ended up creating my own business. It has been a beautiful journey where I'm going to quote Ray Dalio that really is all about when there is pain and reflection, there is growth. And that has definitely been my case with New Dawn, that a lot of growth. I came from the psychology field, didn't know anything about business, and transferring to becoming a business owner was challenging, has been challenging, and yet very, very rewarding. And so we're at a really good place with New Dawn.
That's wonderful. I'd love for you to share a little bit about the services that New Dawn offers and the mission of that for-profit entity that you've been running now for so long.
Yes. So we are providing mental health services for the Latin family. Again, knowing my background, to me, is important to connect with the heart and what I'm really passionate about. And so I feel that we do have an expertise in the Latin. So our vision is really to provide, increase the wellness of the underserved Latin families in the community.
That's great. And so then let's look at City Impact, how you got involved with them and how the work that that organization does is connected to the work you're doing in your own counseling practice.
Yes, I am a believer that there is a higher power, and actually things happen for a reason. I started working here with City Impact 20 years ago, and I had been involved with that organization for many years. After I left, started my own business, the executive director, as she was planning to retire, she called me and invited me to come back in that role. And I realized that it would be a beautiful opportunity not only to replicate the story that we have had with New Dawn, but also to be able to create a hybrid model in which the two organizations are completely separate, yet there is a beautiful symmetry, synchronicity between the two organizations, and we are able to collaborate in such a way that I believe that's where the magic of a nonprofit and a for-profit works really well together. And so what I learned from the for-profit world is really so important to become efficient and effective with your time, your resources, maximize every single thing, and be very efficient at responding to the changing needs of the environment. And we have really put that through the test with the pandemic and having to change very quickly and pivot to be able to respond to very different needs that we were not used to. And so, with that, bringing it to the nonprofit world, I know that the nonprofit world has some challenges with funding streams and having to scramble to be able to keep things stable. Yet, my experience hasn't been that they focus so much on efficiency. And again, it's just my experience. And the beautiful thing of the nonprofit world is that people are so passionate and so dedicated, and they connect with the heart, and they're so there when our clients need it. And the beauty happens when you connect mission-driven work with efficient and effective business principles. So that's why I'm now in the lead position to be able to really promote wellness in our community and having the nonprofit for profit world come together as collaborators. I think that's where the magic begins.
Well, it's so interesting that your experience in becoming a business owner with New Dawn helped you develop a lot of skills that are now serving you well in this other organization. And, as I was listening to you, Cynthia, I was thinking the common element in both of those is people, right? The people you serve, obviously, but also the people you're leading. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about what have you found to be true, whether you're leading people in a nonprofit versus a for-profit environment. What are some common elements, and what have you been able to bring to both of those situations that have served you and your team well?
Yes, that's a beautiful question. And I think I'm going to refer back. I started the business. I shared with you, I didn't know anything about business. And 3 years into it, I was basically pulling my hair out, thinking, what did I do? How am I going to continue moving forward? Part of the reason is we know that we are a whole. We are not separate from what's happening in our personal life. And at that time, unfortunately, I had a relationship where I felt betrayed. And my trust in life and my trust in others really disappeared. And through that pain and through that time, I just didn't know how to connect with my team. At that point, I had about 37 employees as part of the team. And it was just very difficult. And a friend of mine guided me to look into compassionate communication or nonviolent communication. I interviewed some of her employees, and they were so inspired, and this language had really transformed their lives. So I thought, oh, that's great. So let's start introducing this idea of how can we be more compassionate and have these difficult conversations and challenging. We're going to have conflict because we're humans and it's part of life. But how is it that we're going to manage it in a way that I'm compassionate to the other person, to myself, knowing that I have lost trust in humanity basically because of what I was going through. And so the process has started, and it has been about 4 years in which we had really developed this model as a way of communicating inside the business. And with that, so the principle of the model is really that underneath every feeling that you have a need that you want to fulfill. And that we all have needs, and we're only trying to do the best to really fulfill our needs. And so we might use strategies or things that are not really aligned with who we are, but we're just trying to meet the need. So again, if I translate that to my home life, my son dislikes tremendously washing dishes. And yet is if I don't stay only with the behavior, but I go beyond the behavior and look at, what are the needs that he's trying to fulfill by not washing the dishes? Is, well, maybe he wants to relax. He has a need for ease. He has a need for mattering because he wants to really let me know that that task is something that he doesn't want to do. And so I don't stay in judgment of, oh my God, he didn't do the dishes. Is being curious about what is motivating his behavior. So that's kind of one of the basic principles of nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, and then translate to our business world is, let's see why they left the front desk unattended. It's not about, the situation per se, but what motivated for them to do that. And with that curiosity, it develops a sense of compassion for others as well for self-compassion. I would say that this is really one of the core pieces when you're able to look at yourself and provide some self-compassion and understand that what you did it because that was the best strategy that you could find at that point to meet your needs. Then it translates in opening your capacity to be able to be compassionate for others. And so that on its own is what I feel I bring to the table when I'm trying to lead a team. So more than the words, more than the work that we're doing outside, which is a beautiful opportunity to enhance people's lives and be there when they are in pain and they are facing some mental health challenges. It's really going back to self-compassion as a way of increasing our capacity for compassion for others.
There's so many things that you said there, Cynthia. We could take a deep dive around. I want
Yes.
to acknowledge, though, your discovery of that and your adoption of it, both at home and at work. And I think for me, as I was listening to you, what resonated so deeply is this idea of us shifting away from judging others, assuming we know what's driving them or why they did this, and instead adopting a curious approach where we're eager to learn more about what's going on with them. I just think the value of that in terms of how the other person responds to us is just a remarkable difference because they feel it when we're judging. You know, whatever our words are, we can try to couch them in a more polite version of why on earth did you do that or didn't you
Yeah.
do that?
Yes.
And shifting it to, tell me more about what happened so that
Mhm.
we learn more without them feeling like we're getting ready to, jump all over them about what they did or didn't do. So that's one piece. The other thing is around the self-compassion, because you hit on something there that is really important for every person listening to consider. And that is when we're not able to be compassionate with ourselves, we're much more impatient and intolerant of others. And the more we can learn that self-compassion, the more we are able to apply that to others. So I would love for you to share, Cynthia, what was your own journey like in discovering how to have more self-compassion? Because I'm guessing some of my listeners might be wondering, well, what does that really look like, in practice? What does that really mean? So help us understand that.
Yes, and it actually connects with what you said in terms of judgment. And amazingly enough, judgment is not necessarily negative, yet it gives us a lot of information about what's happening in the situation. So I could be judging the other person, or I could be judging myself. Oh, I didn't do this right. How did I say that? Da, 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 da. So it's very important to listen to what is it that we are telling ourselves and what is it that we are saying to others, because that gives us clues on what are the needs that I have underneath that are not being met in this situation. And that's where, when I'm connecting to self, is where I'm able to develop the compassion. Because um, when I understand myself and I validate that there is a need for rest that I wasn't even considering when I don't want to look at the dishes,
Mhm.
then or maybe my other need, let me think about it for a minute. It was consideration. When I think about, oh yeah, well, my need for consideration is not being met when the dishes are not washed, then it helps me connect with no wonder why I overreacted and I ended up raising my voice and whatever I did. So it allows me to understand where I was coming from, have that self-compassion for whatever action I did that I didn't like about myself, and then say, okay, well, maybe next time I would do it differently. So it's kind of it creates an internal feedback system that allows you to connect with, I wasn't doing it just because I wanted to be a bad person and I wanted to hurt the other. It comes from, I really needed some um, consideration to my needs and what I have said to the other person. So, and I am intentionally moving into personal and work life because, as I said, I don't believe in the idea of we're just, one person, oneself when we are at work and another person when we're at home. It all comes together and integrates. If you didn't have a good night's sleep, you're definitely going to have a reduced capacity that day. Let's put it out on the table and you have a meeting and you say, my capacity is really low today because I didn't have a good night's sleep. And so if I say something that is difficult or it doesn't land well, please let me know. And so I'm giving you some very simple examples of how is it that we integrate that sense of compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for others during our work life. So we have integrated into our agenda for every meeting. So we start with a simple check-in for what is a celebration that you have in your life, and if you have any mornings, we call it mornings, any things that are heavy in your heart that is like, oh, I'm really dealing with this. And that allows us to see, okay, this person's capacity is not all there. And we're going to have a little bit more compassion for what happens in the day for that person or during the meeting.
No, that is so important. And I love the fact that you said you've integrated this into your meeting. So it's a part of your culture. It's a part of the way you do things as a team, as a company. And to me, what I was feeling as I was listening to you is the support the people who work with you must feel to be able to acknowledge, this isn't a great day for me because I didn't get enough sleep or, whatever it is that may have happened, to have that sense of freedom to be open, I think is so important because in so many workplaces that doesn't exist. And so people are carrying around these burdens without having any place to share them. And it can result in lashing out or responding in a way that others are going, what's going on? Right. But they don't know. Whereas here, the person is being proactive and sharing. I didn't get a good night's sleep. So, in case I say something, giving others permission to point out, hey, you sounded a little impatient there or a little sharp with your tone, to give people that opportunity to give, not just give you feedback, but support you. They understand the
Mhm.
need that you have. So to me, I love the way this brings needs out in the open, and we'd
Yes.
have to guess what is it that's driving this other person.
Yes. And yet it requires a level of vulnerability for you to be
Yes.
able to share, which is not comfortable and is not the status quo of running operations at a business because it has been told to us that we should not, we should be professional and leave our feelings at home. And to me, it's quite the opposite. I also wanted to say that when people are willing to be transparent and vulnerable about their personal situation, whatever it is, then it also allows us as a business structure to be able to create a system of support for that person. But if we don't know what's really happening for them in their personal lives and what is reducing their capacity, there is no way that we're going to be able to create strategies. So, in the past, we had a therapist that her mom was going through a cancer diagnosis and she was supporting the mom. And she didn't share with us for the first couple of months. We saw a difference and but we're like wondering, we are opening the door. We really want to support this person, but she's not willing to share. So we're just guessing. And when she finally was able to open up, then we were able to change her work schedule to make sure that she had the flexibility and be able to be there for her mom and tending to her. And her attitude changed completely just because we were able to listen to what she was going through and adjust to what her needs were. And then we create a win-win situation because we as business owners and organizations are nothing without people. And so just creating a strategy that is a win-win and not only one-sided. Oh, but we need productivity, or she thinking, I need time for my mom. I need to hold those two together and create something that works for everybody.
Cynthia, that's a really important example because here you've created an atmosphere where people are encouraged to be open and vulnerable. And yet, for various reasons, this person in this situation wasn't initially able to do that. And I think that, to me, a really big takeaway from what you're saying is we never know what fear may be going on in somebody else's head. And in fact, another aha to me is we all have these fears in our own heads that keep us from speaking up about something. We're afraid of criticism or rejection or some kind of negative reaction. And what it is we're creating stories in our head that don't exist in reality because, in fact, once you found out what her situation was, you all rallied behind her and looked at how can we support her. So my guess is she was probably a little bit surprised because in her own mind, she had probably anticipated that it was going to be a bad reaction, and that's why she held back. Does that ring true?
Yes, definitely. And yet it's not difficult. As I said, we had been socialized not to connect with our feelings, even as therapists, in the world of psychology. And without that vulnerability and the desire to dialogue with the other person, then we had found out that no matter what strategies we put in place, nothing is going to work because we don't know that the needs underneath, the situation are not clear to us. And then we are left with.
Right.
And I think that as I said, it has taken us years, and it's not an easy process, and the culture has shifted. I feel that the tension and the urgency of things had diminished because we had moved more into important things and not urgent. And with that, your nervous system responds in a completely different way. So we say that we generate a lot of oxytocin right now at the office because we have a lot of laughter, and we have what we call team connection lunch, which we all come together and bring our own lunches and just sit down around the table to eat. So we have created to implement all of this is creating systems of support that are aligned with our values as an organization, and that really are congruent with what we're saying. It's not only saying, oh, my value is compassion, but how does that translate really on actionable items that you see throughout the organization?
Yeah, that's such a great point that I think anyone in any leadership role can take a time to look at what are our stated values and what are the ways that we manifest them in the way we interact with each other and with our clients. The whole gamut of how we are being with each other. And it isn't that you arrive at a place of perfection, because as you said earlier, we're all human beings. We all are going to be making mistakes, saying things we, wish we could take back. But the model of compassionate communication sets the stage for us to be more open and less judging
Mm-hmm.
and willing to create, as you say, a support system where we feel safe with each other. And this kind of leads me to another related but different topic that I wanted to cover with you, Cynthia, because of the unique situation that you are in as a woman who's come from another country. You know, you've worked with a lot of Latina women, and there's a startling statistic from a very recent research study that was conducted by McKinsey and Company, and it illustrates why Latinas such as yourself have to what you have to overcome in America. Only 1% become C-suite executives, which makes them the least represented in all of corporate America. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about why you think that's so, and then what have you personally done to overcome some of the barriers that you've encountered over the years?
Yeah, definitely it's a statistic that makes me sad. And yet it's kind of human reality. I think that immigrants in any country um, are not looked as adding value to that country. And I have seen this happen in so many other places, not only in the United States. And so it's always like this um, look down on other people because we have an accent and we look different. I am a very passionate person, and when I start getting passionate, people usually like, "Don't raise your voice at me." I'm like, "I'm not raising my voice. I'm just passionate. This is really like something that I am um, passionate about, and I want to express it that way." And so I think that is the concept of different, and why is it that we are not in corporate America as much as other ethnicities? It's just because we are a little bit different. And I think that what I would say to other Hispanic women or Latin women um, that are struggling with this, I would say don't quiet your voice. Each voice is super, super important for us to take into consideration, because when we're looking at things, sometimes we don't get to see the full 360. And if voices are not brought up and listened to, we're never going to be able to get the full picture. So it's almost the parallel process to what I was sharing. You know, people need to be able to be vulnerable and share what's really happening with them. So then we, as a collective, we could create a different strategy for things to change in the workplace and in the world that we live in. And so just empowering people um, to raise their voices, raise their concerns. There is no wrong opinion. It's just a different opinion. And so the more they get used to saying what is in their minds, the more they're going to be able to contribute. And I know it makes it very difficult when people are ignoring you and not paying much attention. Find a different way. Maybe now you write about it. Maybe you talk to a different person. You will find some resonance, and you will find some uh, people that are more open than others to be able to move your idea forward.
Mhm. Well, it seems to me that women face a special challenge that men typically don't. And I think this can be true of Hispanic women, Black women,
Mhm.
and white women too, for that matter. But especially, I think the minorities is that mix of coming across, as you say, speaking up, using your voice without sounding and being judged as overly aggressive. And I know we can't control the opinions of others, but because of what you've done so successfully with both your business and the nonprofit, what have you found to be effective when somebody raises a concern like, oh, you're talking too loud, or you're being too passionate or too something? What kind of response have you found has been helpful for your own well-being and for helping to educate others about your value?
Well, I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of curiosity, where is that coming from? The statement that you are making. And also have, with the self-compassion, I have learned to accept that I am different and it's okay to be different. And so, as much as I might disagree with the judgment or the opinion of others, just putting that space in between and connecting with what is behind that statement and being able to move forward. And I'm going to say, it's not always easy because people are not able to see the full picture, I think, and and they have their own judgments towards us. So kind of lowering those walls that we had built to not share truly from our hearts and protect ourselves, because what's going to happen if I am completely honest, and makes it very difficult sometimes to integrate that curiosity or that opportunity to learn from the different perspectives. So
I think that, yeah, that's such an important point. And what was coming to my mind as you were saying that is for us to be able to respond in a way that the other person can hear us, it's important not to take personally what they're saying. And of course, they may be speaking about us individually, but if we can recognize this really isn't about me, this is more about them. And so as you so eloquently said, looking at what's behind that statement that they have made in a calm manner. I think that's so important because to me, a lot of what you've been saying about compassionate communication has to do with how we respond to what other people say and our ability to keep on that curiosity hat instead of defend, explain, rationalize, prove I'm right, you're wrong. This all that does is escalate the conflict or the
yes,
potential conflict into
yeah.
something that we really don't want.
Mhm. And I think adding to a comment that you made earlier is the idea that many times we fill in the gap and we believe the story that we want to believe. And yet, many times it's because people are not aware that, and they don't know, the saying that they don't know what they don't know. People really
Hmm.
don't know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to extend this conversation, but I recently went to the Olympics with my kids, and me, a Colombian woman coming from where I come from, to be in the Olympics was like a huge deal. And I was trying to explain to my kids, they didn't get it. They have never faced that gap, because for them, going to the Olympics, their friends went to the Olympics, their co-worker, their coach, whatever. So yeah, as much as we want to connect with others, understanding that they have not experienced the same things and they might not understand our what we bring to the table.
Such a good point. I think you used the word dialogue earlier, which to me is such a key word, this ability to have a conversation so we understand where someone else is coming from, what's behind their opinion, and
Mhm.
us being able to share what's behind our opinion. Whether we end up in an agreement at the end or not, it's gaining that better understanding of each other so that we have the potential for having a positive relationship despite whatever differences or disagreements we may have.
Yes, yes. And I want to add something else that, because I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it's all pink and rosy and perfect. I have my own personal NVC coach, nonviolent communication coach, that I could go to and I could judge and I could tell them all my negative thoughts and what's going on with me. And yet, just by being able to express it, later I'm able to come back to, okay, what are my needs? What are the needs of the other? Let's bring it to a place where, I could really see the reality of the other. So it's so important to have those other people that are not involved in the situation and that are able to be a listen sounding board for you in these situations. So I think that becoming an entrepreneur is one of the most challenging things that I have decided to do with my life, and yet so rewarding. And it's important to have a system of support that will allow you to judge and be angry and say whatever you want to say, that are not going to take it personally. And then you come resourced and with the capacity to hold that compassion for others, because it's not always there.
No, and that's such an important, I think, point for us to kind of come to closure around the idea that you don't need to do this alone. It's hard to do alone, if not impossible, because we can't always see ourselves. We think what we're thinking is the truth, and in reality, there's other possibilities and perspectives. So it really helps to have a coach, a mentor, a trusted advisor, someone or someones that we can go to who will help us regain that perspective and look at things in a different way. And I think that's one of the key roles that leaders can play with the people on their teams uh, as they're listening to them to help them think differently at times about or see a situation differently and help them discover options for responding that they might not have considered without feeling like I've got to be the answer person. I've got to give the, wisdom advice to the person, but drawing it out of them by listening and by being curious, all the things you were talking about. I think as a leader, we can do that and help the people on our teams grow and learn as a result. Because what's clear to me, Cynthia, in our conversation is you have been a lifelong learner. You have continued to seek solutions that will help not make just your life better, but everybody on your teams, in your families. So you're having a positive impact on all the lives that you interact with on a regular basis and even beyond, because when others change how they're being, they have a ripple effect, of course, with the people in their lives. So I want to acknowledge you and the important work that you're doing, both with New Dawn and with City Impact, and the lives that you're impacting in that community and then extending beyond that. You are such a role model for someone who has come from a different country, has looked for ways to contribute, and in fact is making a real positive impact for it. So thank you for who you are and for joining me on my show today.
So much, Meredith. This was a lovely conversation, and I do appreciate the kind words that you have for me. It has been a fun journey to continue growing, and I'm planning on continuing to grow. And I'm very, very honored and privileged to have the opportunity to be the leader at City Impact as well as New Dawn. It's a beautiful experience.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out the powerful tools we've created to help leaders strengthen their character and communication skills. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.